All right, good evening, everybody. It is 5:35, and this is the Curriculum and Instruction Committee meeting. If we could start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, if we can just go around the table and folks, if we can just state our names for the record.
Dave Rathkep.
Connor Kurtz.
Rob Hurley.
And then from the administration, if you guys.
Scott Lennox. Jenny Markstrom. Megan Weber.
All right, we have no members of the public currently. Moving on, District Foreign Language. Well, first let me just thank everybody for coming out on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and so we could have this meeting with our new meeting pattern. So I know it's not a work day for our district folks. I really appreciate them being here today. District Foreign Language Program. All right, I know that the committee has been meeting, the I don't want to say Parent Advisory Committee, the Foreign Language Working Group. That has been meeting on and off.
You wanted an update. I'll kind of give you an idea where we're at with it right now, guys. Would you pass these over to these guys?
While you're passing these out, I'll just read the agenda because we don't have the hard copies available, but just to refresh everybody's mind what we're talking about tonight. Foreign language, a discussion of syllabi in the district, one-to-one technology programs, discussion on textbooks, staff engagement, and then public comment, if we have any, and then adjournment. And if anybody has any other topics, time permitting, we could talk about those as well.
Okay, I wanted to give, at your request, I wanted to give you an update of kind of where we're at with foreign language. At the board's request, we formed a group. It was a fairly robust group. We had a school board member, which was Dane. Several administrators were on this group. We had one parent who also happened to be a foreign language teacher in another district, which was helpful to get her insights on what they do. And then we reached out to the local colleges, as you asked us to. The only local college that does foreign language is Albright College, and we did not get any response from them. I called them twice. They obviously weren't interested in what we were doing. So, but nonetheless, we did reach out to them also, and we did have two former students, because you also asked that we have some former students to get their perspective on the group itself. What we did first, just to kind of give you a rough idea, our first course of action was to do a needs assessment in essence. And what I gave, this document here is a real informal document. It's just an internal document here, and you can take a look at it. And it involves some of the ideas of the committee, but it also kind of gives you an idea of the framework in which we're looking at things. Our first idea was to see where we are at as a district and where ultimately we want to get to. So we conducted a needs assessment. If you look inside of your folder here, and we looked at this information as a committee, there's a document right here, and it tells you what all, we wanted to look at what are the other districts doing in comparison to ourselves. And if you take a look at this, you can see Carol inside of here, and Dave, you can see inside of here. You can see what the other districts are doing at the elementary level, at the middle level, and at the high school level.
Is there another packet there?
You didn't get one? Okay.
Oh, sorry, I didn't pass them down.
I was wondering why.
I'm sorry about that. Someone should have, yeah.
You can see the Excel spreadsheet. That's basically the data, and it kind of gives you a rough idea of what the other school districts are doing. Because our first course of action was to take a look at what are other people doing and where are we at in comparison to that. Generally speaking, what you see is in comparison to our peers, we do not offer a middle-level foreign language program at Daniel Boone currently. Most of our peers do. I believe it was Ole and Reading were the two other districts, middle schools that we found that did not offer that. So we did a comparison there. Generally speaking, speaking, and obviously we're speaking in generalities here, at the high school level, you see the traditional courses, generally the same courses we're offering. Some are a little more expansive, like Wilson, for example. You can see there. You will see a little bit more AP offerings at some of the other districts. I can speak to that anecdotally for you. At the elementary level, it's very Spartan. There's not a lot in Berks County in regards to that. I can tell you Chester County and Montgomery County has done a little more work in regards to elementary foreign languages. So that's kind of where we're at in terms of compared to our peers, which I think was our first course of action is, I do think, I mean, when we talked among the committee, and this was very unanimous, this is the middle level foreign language program is something that we want to look at as a district. We do believe, and certainly Jenny can speak to this, middle school by its very nature is supposed to be exploratory, and we're supposed to give kids lots of opportunities to see what they like, what they don't like, see what their interests are. The department chair also believes that that's an area we certainly want to look at.
And who is the department chair?
What's that?
Who's the
Anita,
department?
and you want to talk to the middle level program a little bit and what your thoughts are, Jenny, also?
Well, it's important to me that we at least have an exploratory type thing, maybe a world language program, just to give the middle school students exposure to the foreign languages, because they are making a choice when they're in middle school to take a foreign language in high school, and they really have no background or basis to make that decision other than what their parents say or what they think sounds cool. So I think from that standpoint, it's important. It also, I mean, students are able to, when they graduate high school, get accepted to how should I say, even better schools when they have more of a foreign language background than if they don't. So one of my other concerns is just, you know, if we're shortchanging our students by not giving them the opportunities that are there in most of the other school districts in this county.
What was our former program?
Previously, and it went, we used to have a middle level foreign language in all the different subjects, and we used to start it in 7th grade as an exploratory, and then we built it into like a foreign language 1 type of opportunity when they went in there. It was,
So when you say exploratory,
exploratory, it gives them a taste of different languages. That was done in 7th grade, then in 8th grade.
they're given like half a year, or is it?
Yeah, and exploratory,
Like half year French, half year Spanish?
what you would do is like a half year or a quarter of a year or a third
For me, it was
year into
half
the
year
different
German and half
languages.
year Spanish.
And I'll be honest with you, I'm going back, this is a while when you go back to where it was back in 7th grade, and then and the goal here is to, and let me put it in this context, what we're trying to do is rebuild our program and look at it in today's world, not just at what we cut. And
What do we offer in high school now? What languages?
Okay, and Megan, you can jump in here if you want, but we have French and we have German and we have Spanish at the high school. We still like to develop some things in terms of AP types of things in foreign languages at the high school, but that's currently what we offer. We'd like to bring, currently, if we can schedule it and our staff, until staffing is decided, we can't be certain on things, but we'd like to continue to bring Chinese up to the high school for next year.
And how many students typically take which language?
Megan, can you jump in and add some color to that for us?
Did you say how many typically take 2 years?
How many kids are in French? How many do Spanish? How many do German?
Give me a minute, I'll report now. I can tell you that for our German, we typically have 2 sections of the German.
Yeah, I was wondering, as part of the conversation, I'm wondering, do we want to tweak the high school, match we still want to offer German, French, Spanish? Mm-hmm. Do we want to take one away, replace it with Chinese?
Mm-hmm. These are all fair questions to ask, and it was some of the things we discussed, and we did some surveys too, if you look in here, just in terms of what the interest level, it's back about 5 or 6 pages. Now keep in mind, these surveys, the people who are going to our website to take the survey, obviously parents and kids of our students, where it's not the whole community itself, it's people who are directly interested in these types of things. You can see that the interest, it has the interest level by different levels of schooling itself. I can tell you, and I can get you some more data, I do have a little bit of survey data.
Do you have any
in
idea how
terms
many
of-
participants were in the survey? Like, I mean, if it was like 10 people.
it was more than that. It was more than that, Connor. I wouldn't even pull it out if it was that. I mean,
Right.
these are prints of the pivot table, and so it was enough of the survey interest that I had to collate together in a pivot table. You can see that from right there. I mean, I can get you the exact numbers if you'd like to have that, but it wasn't 10.
I'm just looking for like a ballpark. Do you have an estimate?
I'd say 70 people,
70
60 people. Yeah. It was enough that I had to run a pivot table in Excel for it to get it.
At the high school, this year, we're offering 2 sections of French 1, 2 sections of French 2, 1 section of French 3, and 1 section of French 4. German, we have 2 sections of German 1, 2 sections of German 2, then 1 of the German 3, and 1 of the German 4. Spanish, we offer 7 Spanish 1 sections, and then Spanish 2 goes down to, or stays at 7, and then Spanish 3 goes down to 4 sections, and then there's 2 honors of Spanish.
So Spanish 1, 2 is required, or
No.
foreign language 1, 2 is required,
It
or
is
no?
not a graduation requirement
Okay.
at the high school level. So these are, but it is,
But obviously, if you're taking 3 and 4, you're probably taking that, or,
it really depends on their college plans.
Okay.
Because most colleges, depending on how competitive they are, do require 2 years of a foreign language. And most of the time it's consecutive language, so they want the Spanish 1 and the Spanish 2. But depending on what their aspirations are in college, depending on their programs, they might need to have that foreign language exposure because they're going to have to not only know it and have the background for their taking it in college, but also to be able to have it as background to be able to interact with people of other cultures and languages.
so obviously, our Spanish and French are kind of neck and neck for second place there.
Our French.
Our Spanish and, French and German. Yeah, yeah.
Yes. Yes. And then we have 1 French teacher and 1 German teacher. And depending on the years, depend on how many sections they have. Some years we've had to use them every single period that they're available, based on enrollments. We've maxed things out. They also sometimes have to do independent study kind of things. They really work with us to make sure that the students who are interested in foreign languages are able to take those courses.
So as you can see, the middle school, we thought in terms of where we are in comparison to our peers, clearly the biggest gap was at the middle level in comparison, to getting our kids up to speed and offering the same opportunities as our peers in Berks County was. One of the things the committee asked us to do, or what you guys asked us to do, and which we're also very interested in doing, is what else can we do to make our program a special program? And obviously, all this has to be financially sustainable. For example, if we bring a middle school program back in, we don't want to bring it in 1 year and then get rid of it the following year. We want to be able to continue the program year to year. Otherwise, we're wasting resources as a district. But and plus, there's a lot of time and effort that goes into programming and designing programming for kids of that nature. And this we were also, if you take a look at, there is interest in other courses like Chinese, like Japanese is also a business language in the world. We're also interested in not only expanding the levels of the courses, but we also, and the committee also thought this would be an approach, is in terms of expanding the opportunities for other students in regards to some languages that don't exist currently in our school district, to your point right there. For example, the Japanese we don't offer. That's a world business language that's out there. And then reasonably speaking, and then how do you go about doing that? You can't even get a Japanese teacher, let alone be in that situation. So, some of the ideas we talked about potentially down the road, and this would be a later phase if we were to ever do something, is creating a world language lab where we can do a distance type of learning, because you're not, the demand, and these would be for courses that the demand isn't near as extensive for, but yet we still may have kids who have an interest in those particular subjects. Maybe Arabic. Arabic is one of the most spoken languages in the world. Are we we going to have a ton of interest for that? Probably not, but maybe we have 5 or 6 kids who might have an interest. Yeah, and maybe we do something digitally through digital learning, which does exist, and I can talk to you. I mean,
Maybe we can get a grant from the NSA,
there you go.
CIA.
But there are world languages out there that we can certainly, there is an interest in our community for those types of things, not to mention it may create opportunities for students down the road. As we did with Chinese this year, there are a variety of ways you can do it digitally through Middlebury College, which is the foremost, if not the top, one of the top foreign language colleges in the country. They have a program that they sponsor, and they do it digitally for languages like that, where they know most school districts, unless you're a mega school district like Council Rock, can't pull that type of thing off.
How's our Chinese IU going?
It's going very well, and I'll let Jenny speak to that. Go
Yeah, it's
ahead.
going very well. The students are really enjoying it. Parents have gotten great feedback. So there definitely is an interest in continuing that past.
How many, we filled the section, right?
Yes, you can only have 20.
20.
So we've filled it in less than 24 hours, so.
And who's proctoring that? Or who's in the actual physical class?
I have a teacher who is in there every day with the students while they take that.
How do we measure, like, let's say we wanted to do Chinese too, like, what are these students going to do next year, first of all? And then second part of my question, how do we measure to make sure that they are meeting the benchmarks?
If you take a look in your folder, guys, what ultimately, the program, whatever we decide to do with foreign languages, these are called the can-do statements, or the can-do standards, some people call them. And this, to your point, this tells you what students should be able to do in foreign languages, and the varying different levels within the rubric itself. So that if you page to, now obviously we're not going to read every dime there, but it'll give you an idea of what's considered low level, what's considered high level. I mean, ultimately, when you look at the top tier colleges and universities, they love for kids to be fluent in a foreign language. That's an edge that they can get. It's not required at every single top tier college. However, when you do look at the Princetons and the Harvards and places like that, that is certainly a characteristic that they like to have. When you deal with the kids who've taken an interest in this and are top tier students, obviously you want to get them to a point where they're fluent in doing that. When you talk about doing that through all of this, even like if you look at this, the action plan we have here, some of the things we talked about, ultimately, and this would be multiple years down the road, we want to look at immersive experiences in our district, and we're not there. This isn't short-term discussion here, but it's more longer term. We want to look at, foreign exchange programs. We want to look at summer programs, different types of immersion programs where the kids are speaking the language on a daily basis and regularly and in their general interactions to generate total mastery, if that's what you're talking about there,
Well,
Connor.
if you don't mind, something that I really want to learn and get a greater appreciation district-wide, what is the point of our foreign language program in Daniel Boone? If we had to boil it down to what are we trying to achieve, what would that answer?
This is what you should be looking at, is these can-do standards, and ultimately...
But which level?
And what ultimately, it depends on the student, because everything should be individualized for students and what their needs and desires and aptitudes are. And so it depends on the students. For different students, it may need different things. For a child who's trying to get into Harvard, it looks a lot different than a student who's trying to get employed right when they get out of Daniel Boone. I'll give you an example, though, but it still may fall into this. Say we have a kid who's going to tech school.
Yeah.
In Berks County right now, and I'll be happy to share this document. I went to a seminar with the Berks County business leaders, and it talks about where their job market is. One of the areas where they have an extraordinarily high demand right now is in the healthcare field. All the research I've done in healthcare indicates it's exceptionally valuable to be bilingual in that particular thing. Now, what languages in Berks County are a different ballgame. Maybe Chinese may not be quite as valuable as Spanish, for example, given the demographics of our community. But the reality of it is, the Berks County business leaders say this is excellent. If we have a student who's going to tech school, the ability to become fluent in them makes them a very valuable employee.
Well, understood. But I'm trying to figure out, for the sake of our foreign language program, let's say for Spanish 1 or German 1, on this chart of benchmarks, is our expectation that the students become high novices?
And that's
or-
where we're getting in the weeds here a
Well,
little
no,
bit, Connor.
this is the point that I'm trying to figure out here, because we have all these ideas here in front of us. We want to expand to the middle school level, but I'm trying to figure out what is the objective of our whole
The
program.
objective of the whole program, Connor, is to, number one, provide opportunities for kids that want to get into elite schools.
Okay.
Provide real-world skills for kids. Foreign language is a real-world skill that kids can do, okay? In the real world, Connor. These can-do standards will allow, if the program we design meets these can-do standards, it provides them with real-world skills. It also gives them appreciation for culture. We want kids to go above and beyond and have appreciation
But
for
you-
cultures
and also
outside
the-
of
I mean,
Douglasville and Birdsboro.
We're kind of, maybe the globalism is taking a step back as of late. But internationally, most corporations are multinational. And, I know a lot of folks that work overseas or have communications with, India and Europe. And now, granted, a large percentage of the folks do speak English because that's the dominant language in business. But, you still need, it's great to have that, second language that folks can be more marketable for like an international corporation if that's their job is looking for.
Something, and I agree with Dave there, something that I'm thinking and reflecting on in my experience in Daniel Boone, and having gone on from Daniel Boone to study foreign language, at least 2 years of it in college, and I don't want to take too much from an anecdote and extrapolate too much, but I do not feel like I was prepared coming out of Daniel Boone when it comes to foreign language, and speaking with some of my peers from my class, I think they felt the same way. One of the reasons for that, as I see it, like we in college spent a lot of time learning about the subjunctive mood in Spanish, and a lot of students, including myself, we struggled with it because we were unsure when to use the Spanish subjunctive mood for what scenario. So instead of just trying to memorize and learn the language, we were trying to learn the basic grammar behind it. But we have the subjunctive mood in English, but we never talked about that in our English classes. Now we learned it, but we never learned the mechanics of the language.
Those kind of things, that's where I think the immersion comes into play. I mean, we've had students come over here from Japan,
Yeah.
and the learning English. I mean, Japanese is hard, but them trying to learn English is that's really hard for them.
Yeah.
And the nuances of the English language. I mean, how many words can mean four different things.
Yeah. But
So it's I think unless you're really immersed in the language, doing it in high school, you memorize
right.
and but you don't get to really.
Yeah, and I don't
Unless the
expect
teacher's
that.
really.
And the passionate students have to want to do that and want to put in the effort. And that's another thing. There's a lot of work to learn one of these languages. But what I'm thinking about, specifically my bringing up this whole subjunctive mood business and other parts of English, is I think that there's a tie-in there. I think that if our English curriculum is strong, that complements our foreign language curriculum and vice versa. The stronger we are when it comes to foreign languages, the stronger our students are, the stronger they're going to perform in English if they're still learning those basic constructs of grammar. In both of those classes. So I don't know, my idea for Daniel Boone's foreign language program is that yes, we prepare our students to go to these elite schools, and also we give them real world skills, but not only that we reinforce the basics of the English language through these courses. And I don't want to say you go into a German class and you learn English grammar, but these things, again, they complement each other. And if the students in my college Spanish class knew what the subjunctive mood was in English, they would have understood it, I think, a whole lot better in Spanish.
What do they do now in 8th grade? What's that class that we replaced foreign language with?
Reading.
Reading. Right. And is there actually a teacher in there, or is that kind of on their own kind of pace, or what's?
No, there are teachers that teach that course.
Okay.
Every 8th grader takes it. There are some students who need a more intensive program, so they have what we call strategic reading in place of reading aid. But so basically, it's just differentiated according to their need in reading.
Right. But I know you were on the board when. So how did they save money by eliminating languages? We're still having a teacher
I don't think they did.
Well,
If you're asking me,
well,
like,
on that, but we had a German teacher, we had a Spanish teacher, but we still, I guess, had the same number of students to educate, right? Maybe, I have to imagine there was some type of savings.
I think originally, early on, and we're going way back here, guys.
So I thought I recalled some kind of self-directed class, no?
I
Where it was like kind of, you had somebody like this kind of keeping an eye on the class, but there was
I think
more.
what you think you recall is not terribly relevant, given that Jenny's telling us what is. So,
Yeah.
I was trying to get, because, the question's gonna come up is, okay, what's the cost involved, right? Because that's obvious,
yeah, to add, we can't add it
Yeah,
back, sure.
So I know the reason we got rid of languages was in theory to save money. But if we didn't save money.
We probably don't have somebody on staff now who could teach a foreign language, right? I mean, it would probably require a different teacher, whether it's an additional teacher or not.
Yeah, and keep
right?
in mind, I think what we want to do, what we've talked about as a group, is the foreign language, it would be an exploratory course. So we'd be looking at it as a world language course. And so you're going to have, what you'd end up doing is, the person we'd have in that spot, we'd envision, would have someone who can speak one language very fluently, a foreign language very fluently, but also has a good understanding and a basic knowledge of the other cultures and the other languages. That would be how we'd have to fill a position like that, because it would be a little bit, it is what it is, and that's how we'd have to.
So would it be like kind of this reading class? So like like half the kids would take reading and then they would flip-flop like half the year through, or, I mean, obviously one teacher is not enough for the entire eighth grade, is it? Or is it?
Depends on how we structure it. It depends on how something like this would be structured ultimately. Depends on whether it would be offered in a special area as an encore class, which is one of the different models that we are looking at, or it depends on whether there's some other things you can do too. And this, we'd have to flesh these types of things out. We would want to look at, for example, we'd look at the data on the kids taking currently in eighth grade, and the kids who are good readers and the kids who are excellent readers, like the kids who are scoring advanced, and it's consistent with our other internal data points on them. Those will be generally the kids you'll be looking at for foreign language types of things, because the reading is always important, don't get me wrong, please, but maybe you would have a selection type of thing. That would be a possibility where the kids would have that opportunity if they're doing very well. And so you may have a lesser need there if you were to place the course in that particular area. If you were to play, and we've had multiple discussions on this. If we were to go the route of a special area, then what we'd have, it would be, they'd get some choices in terms of which courses they were taking, whether they would want to have that or they pick random family and consumer science or something of that nature, or a computer app or something of that nature, depending on what they want. So it would depend on which way we decide to do that ultimately, guys.
Is your intention that it would be required, or that it would be, an elective, so to speak? Or have you not?
We're in the middle, and Jenny, you can jump in on this piece. We're in the middle of discussions in terms of where it would fit into a schedule itself, whether or not it would be. Most likely, we'd be looking at, if we decide to make it a core class, it would be for kids who are doing very well and clearly have demonstrated proficiency in reading.
Could you make it like a
Or we could do
required encore?
No, because not all kids are ready for that. So I wouldn't.
Put it in the rotation with,
Although I wouldn't make it required for every kid, because we have kids who are reading 3, 4 grade levels below. Their attention needs to be elsewhere at that point in time.
Yeah.
Well, maybe just haven't found their niche.
Historically, foreign language was never a mandatory requirement at the middle level for those reasons.
But what was the world cultures class?
World cultures is a world cultures class.
But that was, no.
Social studies.
I'm thinking at the middle school level, when I was there, we had the split
Cultural exploration.
cultural exploration.
That wasn't
excuse me.
required.
That wasn't required. Oh, okay. Huh.
2 questions, if I could. Good evening. Sorry for being late. Accident on coming down. Well, not for me personally. Thank you. Kind of look like I might have the accident, but in Gibraltar there's an accident. Hopefully everyone's family's okay. But the 2 questions I have around it is, historically, there was an exploratory, and forgive me for not being ignorance-wise, I don't know the history. Was the program foreign language exploratory before? in
Yeah.
middle school.
It was exploratory in middle school, right?
It evolved.
It was a
changed.
seventh, eighth grade,
There was
wasn't it?
always an
Eighth grade.
exploratory
It was only
component.
At least when I was there.
To answer your question,
No, it was
always an
seventh.
I thought it said
exploratory
seventh and
component.
eighth.
Seventh, and then there was.
When it originally started, if you go back 13 years ago, there was a 7th grade exploratory component to it. And then when there was some, we all had to squeeze a little bit, and then the 8th grade became exploratory in nature, is my recollection, and then it was eliminated completely.
So my history, though, it was 7th grade exploratory. 8th grade, I took Spanish 1, then Spanish 2 in 9th grade. So it was pretty much shifted up one level.
The question the reason I'm asking that is, have our numbers gone down at the high school in enrollment, stayed the same or increased in relationship to losing the program or having the program? I don't know the answer to that, but that would have relevance. The second question is, the people who are teaching the reading program in middle school, where do they come from? If we eliminated English teachers, or not English teachers, but foreign language teachers, where did the people who are teaching the reading, were they in the middle school, or did they come from when we
They were in the
reduced
elementary
the elementary and moved up? Because that tells you if you save money or not. That answers that question.
Jenny, Rob, do you know what years that program was eliminated? I've got your second run report on it.
No, I don't know. And see, there was 2 phases of elimination. First they got rid of what was going on in 7th grade, and then they got rid of what was going on in 8th grade. So there were 2 phases to that. The 8th grade, when they got rid of what was in 8th grade, that's when.
I think maybe it was like
So I
2011,
don't see
12,
I
somewhere
agree
around
with
there.
Preston, there was no reduction in the 8th grade. And they said when they did it 7th grade, there would have been a reduction there when they got rid of 7th grade, somewhere in there. But we went back a while. We're going back a while again, guys. My recollection.
I think it was like 2011, somewhere.
That would be my
Ballpark.
guess, only because I don't think that I taught in the middle school at all when that reading program existed. So my guess would be 2011.
11, 12, or 12, or 10, 11. I know, I'm running the report on 10, 11 right now.
I want to know here, how do we gauge the achievement of students in in our language programs? When I was there, I mean, we had the test, but we were really being compared to our peers, I felt. We weren't being held necessarily to a standard like this. So when are these standards in use right now, and how do we measure to make sure that our students are meeting these standards?
What we want to do is we want to create a program. There hasn't been a lot of attention
Okay.
to our foreign language program for obvious reasons over the last several years. But we want to, these are the national standards. This is so we want to create a program that aligns closely with these standards. These are nationally recognized. These are very rigorous. These are more rigorous than clearly more rigorous than where things have been. What we ultimately want to get to in our foreign language program is a standards-aligned program, and then the student's progress is measured towards these standards itself. How well do
I'll
we
tell you
get
right now, before we expand in any way, whether it's to the middle school or whether it's to add new languages, I'd really like to see standards in place now so we have a benchmark to measure these things. And I want to see that our program, that our classes are succeeding in instilling these measurable.
We are putting our kids at a disadvantage right now by not offering middle school foreign language. I need to say that.
Well, I also think that we're putting our students at a disadvantage if we are, like I feel personally at a disadvantage having gone through Daniel Boo's foreign language program and not really feeling much better off for it. And if we had these standards in place, I think that would be different. If we knew that going in, I'll be able to introduce myself in Spanish. And again, I'm using myself and my peers as examples here, but I don't think just taking it down one level lower is going to solve that problem. So I really think we need to be able to measure these things before just undergoing some type of radical transformation in terms of our
It's
program.
not radical to put middle school foreign
No, I'm not
language.
saying that, but I think it is radical to not have standards that
I
are in
agree
place
we
right
should
now.
have standards.
Yeah.
We will write the standards if we get the middle school's program.
Well, I think we need to write them regardless of what
We're
happens.
going to write a curriculum before we decide whether we're going to have it or not.
No, we write it for the curriculum we have now.
Yeah.
That's my view, at least.
Where-
Which we shouldn't have to do. It should already be in the curriculum.
So, well, I didn't write the curriculums
Yeah,
that are there.
I don't mean to
Sorry.
accuse
So,
anybody of anything. I hope
I've been
that I
here
don't
for 15
sound.
years, the curriculums that are there right now, so I can't speak to that. I'm sorry.
I have to say also, I'm not sure, I think the requirements for college entry have changed since we phased out the middle school program. With all due respect, and if it was a perfect world, I'd love to have the kids exposed to foreign language at middle school, but First Catholic is telling us we only need 2 years now to get into most schools. The foreign language, so I see if kids are getting it at high school, they've got 4 years to get 2 years in. Of course, we're offering it all 4 levels, so to get into the Harvards and the Yales, I think it says Yale requires 3 years, and Harvard still wants 4. But the vast majority of schools are now, the colleges are only requiring 2 years. I don't see it's necessary to stretch into middle school. I'd rather see the offerings expanded, my own personal preference for our foreign language program. I just like more choices for the kids once they hit high school.
So the question that I have though is, so you're going into 9th grade now, and you're not getting that exposure in middle school, so what language do you pick? Toss a coin?
I did that. I have no problem with that. That's what happened to me.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in Philadelphia, Philadelphia schools, we got exposure in middle school to
There's
both
certain ways
French
to
and
expose
Spanish.
kids to-
We got half a year each, so you get to choose kind of like what language. You know,
I
you want.
did just fine with German
Well,
one, thank you.
the good thing about that, though, is that you can learn the numbers, you can learn the alphabets, you can learn these things, so you at least have some type of
The goal being
base level.
conversational, German or French by the time they leave the program. And
I wonder if there would be a way to combine, now, this is probably crazy, but if we could have that introduction to different languages so students can learn, well, here's French, here's German, here's
maybe
Spanish,
after-school
here's
programs
Chinese.
at the middle school level.
Well, let's say we have that exposure, but then we also can tie in a humanities element. So here's some Spanish culture, here's some Mexican culture. So you're getting the cultural, that was what the cultural exploration was, pretty much.
That's what the vision is of the instructor course anyway, that not just
Okay.
be a language course.
Right.
It would be
And
also,
Yeah.
a cultural, have a cultural component.
Ideally, I'd love to see some writing incorporated in this course as well, just if we're examining different cultures and examining different languages, I think we need to, like some English, like what's the difference like between these cultures and languages. I think that writing element is important too and across our curriculum, but I guess that's different. So that's pretty much what the cultural exploration course was then.
Yeah, I think the intent, I
Okay.
believe that's what the intention would be of this exploratory language course.
So
That'd be cultural.
that then, I guess, I wonder if that would fit anywhere in, I guess maybe novice, low, looking at these benchmarks. I think these benchmarks are very important just because, again, you need to be able to track if our students are achieving what we expect them to. And if we don't know what we expect, then we're just kind of throwing resources out there. And not to say it's not valuable, I'm sure.
All curriculum should be aligned to either the state standards, and absent state standards, they should be aligned to national standards. And so, very clearly, I agree with you 100% on that. Probably at the time our foreign language program was written in Daniel Boone, probably these national standards didn't even exist, to be very honest with you. I mean, it's just a fact.
Yeah,
That's all. That should be
I
very
want
honest with
to
you.
go something on that
Yeah.
point, though, which is especially relevant to this committee. But Mrs. Weber, did you have something?
I can say that every teacher is required to do an SLO every year, the student learning objective, as part of their established state process. And I supervise one of the Spanish 1 teachers, and she directly indicates those standards. Her goal, based on, just so you're aware, that they're having these conversations, is for her students will achieve novice high on the ACTFL proficiency guidelines in reading.
Great,
Like
novice high.
reading, like they're looking at those things, they're using those.
Good.
I can speak to at least that, so that you're aware that they're knowledgeable of them and looking to achieve those things.
Thank you, that's helpful. It does concern me, though, setting aside this specific language issue, and this, I think, speaks to the heart of this committee, being the Curriculum and Instruction Committee, that our curriculum hasn't been revised in 15 years in this section or this sector, and that these benchmarks aren't incorporated into that curriculum because it's so old. Like, things like that, I think those are the bigger issues that we should be,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I think that's an issue, and what should be tied into that, if you're looking at rewriting the curriculum, is getting input on what languages should we be offering at the high school.
Great.
Should it still be German and French, or should we get rid of one of those or both of those, and like you said, put Chinese or some other. Obviously, Spanish is I think an important language, especially for Berks County. Like you said, it makes them more of a marketable entity in Berks County in particular. Have you guys put any kind of dollar value as to how we're working in the middle school?
Well, you obviously, you need to have a teacher, and again, what you guys asked for is an update today, so that's kind of
Yeah,
where
right.
we're at, and what you can see in the action plan, it says, oh, you can see where we're at, right? Basically, we're at the needs assessment point right here, and that's where we are. In terms of the financials, we don't have the exact, but to get any sort of you're gonna need a teacher and to do that, and your normal teacher, what you're gonna be looking at is about 70,000 to 80,000 when you include benefits into the package is something like that. So now whether that comes from a situation of just reassigning staff due to declining enrollment in certain areas and then bringing someone, that's another issue. That's,
Well,
you know,
I'm not sure where we find that person, though.
so what's
I think
that?
it'd probably be a new teacher.
So that would
Yeah.
probably be correct in that situation, because unless we found someone who had a multiple cert, which we always look for in interview processes, by the way.
One teacher would be enough?
What's that? To start, to start a program up.
If you're gonna make it an elective world,
Yeah.
if I can say that word, world cultures type.
Well, thinking about,
Yeah, and bear with us a little bit, because this is, again, you asked for an update, so what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to give you an update. Not everything has been, not every piece. What you can see is areas that are complete, and there's some areas where we've done a little bit of digging on, and there's some areas where we still have some work to do on.
now, I want to move on to the next topic at some point. I think we're definitely going to be coming back to this at some point. But wondering here, and this is trying to figure out more organizationally how these things work. So Mrs. Weber indicated that at least one teacher does employ these standards when she's putting together her state, or SLO, is that it? Now, and then Mrs. Weber, you indicated that you're responsible for making sure, so it goes up to the principal level. The principals are looking to make sure that these forms all align and all that. And then does it go, is there some type of district contact that you have, or are you pretty much the final destination on that?
They do their SLOs, and they've grown in what their compass and scope is, but they're completing an evaluation of student learning. So they're doing different assessments. Most of them are showing growth from doing a pre-test to post-test. It's not ideal, but at least it's showing
Right.
that they're making progress. So the teachers conduct their teaching, their pre-test, post-test, or whatever method they choose. And then they submit the data and information to us about how the students scored. And then we can see, based on their skill set. I obviously don't have the skill set to determine that they're not hired, not
Right.
it, but working with the teachers, we can discuss together where they are and how they improve. So at least, there's that level.
So
Doesn't
there is
state-
accountability there then, that this is what they were learning coming in, this is what they've learned coming out.
That's the base,
And that's,
simplest explanation.
and that's monitored every year to make
Well,
sure
so you'll
that,
preview, that goes into their evaluation. And
Okay.
That's how they get their rating for the year.
yeah,
Goes into the state form, that value, that
Right.
number goes into that. So it's not that the fact that they're novice high, but how did they perform and what they said they were going to do and what they anticipate their students doing, that goes into their 82-1, which is their student.
They
okay,
don't just set they meet
Right,
with us
yeah.
all the time. If they come in with a number that we feel is too low, then we don't accept it, we move, we adjust it up, which sometimes happens. Sometimes they're too high, and say, really, if you think you're gonna really have 100% of the kids achieve,
Right.
it's unlikely, so, we talk about that conversation, and that's set, and that's one, I wanna say the SLO is 15 or 20% of their overall evaluation for the year.
okay. And is that pretty much uniform among foreign language teachers?
So that's uniform among every.
Well, no, I understand the SPL. The SLO though, like that's a geography teacher, his SLO is going to be different than a Spanish teacher's SLO. So what I'm asking within the Spanish department, are those goals all the same? Or could one teacher say, I want my students to be novice high, and the other teacher could say, I want my students to be conversational at
They bring
intermediate
different
low?
things. So, they
Yeah.
have some freedom in the SLO to bring different pieces. The pre-test, post-test, the thing that we often say to them is, well, we expect them to learn, you're teaching them. They came in at this level from the pre-test, we would expect them to have learned something. So what we try to move the conversation towards, and what we are moving the conversation towards, is that we're going against the standards. So to your point, against those standards, at the end, what percentage of kids can do that?
Okay.
Not just in a pre-test, post-test, on a piece of the curriculum, but on the entire curriculum.
Is there a way we could expand that from being, and correct me if this is a poor characterization, like a personal goal? Is the SLO a personal goal of a teacher?
Yes.
Okay, can we take that and turn it into more of a department goal?
We, as administration, have total authority over what the SLO can finally do, so the answer to your question is yes.
Okay. I think that would be good I'd like to see where we are right now, and if we can go back to see where we were previous years, I want to be able to measure our growth.
Now, the state does recommend, and I agree, the best way to do is to collaborate on the SLO. But the ultimate authority lies with management.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
We've been doing SLOs for about 2 to 3 years at Dana, just to give you a rough
Okay.
idea.
Yeah, I remember when that new,
Tool came out.
yeah, we kind of went over what exactly, we broke it down. Memory's a little fuzzy on it, but.
Yeah, all of these things, they start to run together. All right, well,
So next actions here, just so that right now, where do you guys want us to go with this? Where are we in terms of next actions? What do you want us to have for the next meeting or the forward? Would you like to talk about that offline? We can do that too.
yeah, personally, I'd like to learn more about how these standards are being implemented across our foreign language program. I think this is going to be, if we're going to talk about adding stuff back at the middle school level or expanding languages or doing anything to alter the program, we're going to need to have not longer necessarily, but more talks in this committee. I don't expect to have a decision soon as to what we want to do district-wide. That's my view, at least. Because I'm more concerned right now about understanding what our current situation is necessarily than changing at this moment in time. But once we understand more.
I understand your desire to better understand what the current language curriculum includes and what the goals are, but I don't necessarily see why the two things are related.
Yeah, okay.
In the sense that for an exploratory class, the point isn't really to
Right.
get the kids to do anything. It's to expose them to these things, to make them aware of what's out there, and to give them a chance to say, hey, I like this or I don't like this. And then the real leveling, occurs in the high school anyway.
Yeah, so these are two separate conversations.
In my opinion,
Understood.
I'm not the authority on the issue, but to me, they're two separate things. So we could,
Separate the tracks almost
yeah,
here.
in my opinion, we don't need to know the one thing to rule on the other.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I guess my point is that my priority at this point is this, but seeing as there's discussion and interest from other committee members, we could talk about the exploratory program.
I think it could all be fleshed out together.
You think, so you want to keep the tracks together then?
Well, I'm just saying, I think you can develop the exploratory program in middle school and decide how you're gonna run that, whether it's, an elective in the encore piece. And then get our curriculum up to date, because it's 15 years old, right? So get that up to date and then again figure out what languages should we be offering at the high school.
Yeah. I think, so in terms of next steps, I think that a more fleshed out vision for what this exploratory language program would look like and how it melds with what we're offering now, how it would affect staffing, how it would affect this reading program. So that's on that front. I want to read over this a little bit more and think about it, just,
Carl, that is an internal document, just so you
Yeah,
know, just so
okay.
you know that, okay, right there. But that'll give you an idea, it talks about, in the document itself, it talks about how we can potentially, these are ideas that are out there, expand our foreign language program using digital technologies, talks about how we can expand down to the elementary school where we know language learning is most easy for kids, again, using after-school programs, to Carol's point, right there's some potential there. This is a working internal document. right
Have
here.
we had a conversation,
And also
you know,
immersion types of
I know with
ideas.
the online stuff, and I know with the IU and the Chinese piece, we have a teacher manning that class. Now, that teacher's kind of really like a babysitter, right? I mean, they're taking attendance, they're making sure the class is paying
Um,
attention.
Actually, she
She doesn't speak Chinese, does
than
she?
I think she anticipated
Does she speak Chinese?
doing. So
Picking it up.
she could actually, I mean, she's obviously there, so she's been exposed to it.
Yeah.
So she's definitely learned things, but because the teacher is on the screen.
Right.
She is constantly monitoring the kids walking around, making sure that they're on task. If they have questions, she's helping them with them. So she's definitely doing a lot more than I think she
Okay.
kind of thought she was taking on, but she enjoys it because she's getting something out of it.
Because my question, if we go more the online route, we need to have a conversation with the union, right? Because if potentially that's, like Chinese was not an offering we had, right? So my question is, if we're going to pursue more online opportunities, I would think the union wants to have a conversation. Okay, are you using our teachers in the classroom? Is there we're going to be able to use a proctor? What do we need to use?
It's essentially a duty, is what it's classified
Is
as.
that how
So,
it fleshed out?
yeah.
As a duty?
I just
Okay.
had to find a teacher who was available
Okay.
for a duty every day in order to do that.
So there's not really
So-
like a specialized skill set that this teacher had coming into it. Now she's developed a
She
skill set.
actually
But-
does happen to be a social studies
Oh.
teacher, so she did have, some, I wouldn't say that she was like,
Just
you know,
a random,
math teacher
right,
that had
yeah.
no idea, I mean, but I just had to find someone who was able to who was free every day, because obviously you don't want different people in there every day, so I had to find somebody who was free every day for their duty, instead of being in the cafeteria or whatnot, in order to do that.
Well, while they're out, because next I'm going to skip over the syllabus discussion for now. I want to talk about one-to-one, but until Rob gets back, because he's the expert on that, and here he comes. What is the plan? So let's say that a student is enrolled right now and they're learning Chinese. Next year, what happens?
Well,
We don't know
the hope
yet.
is that it will be offered at
At
the
high
high school,
school.
I mean, I think that's the plan, so.
Well, the plan is if there's staffing at the high school, it will be offered. If there's not staffing at the high school,
It
it's not
won't
going
be
to be offered.
offered.
So what we're doing right now is we're taking those kids' names down. We're not scheduling them. We're just like we do with music. We write their name down coming out of 8th grade, put them on a list in Excel, and then we schedule them later by hand if we have the staff.
So it'd be the same, trying to find somebody who has a duty to handle that? Is that-
Correct, but we are tapped out, and I've shared this, we do not have one free period from one staff member in that building. So that has to be said now, so everyone understands that. We'd love to offer that, I think it's a great program. And but there are ways to do it, we've met with Rob, and we have some solutions, but the board's gonna have to support that going forward, he can go into that in another time.
Would it be possible, this program, let's say a student took it in 8th grade and we didn't offer it at the high school for whatever reason, or let's say a student wanted to pick it up after 8th grade, could they take the classes, are they like recordings or is it a live teacher?
No, it's
Could-
live.
Okay, so I wouldn't be able to go home at 4 o'clock, log on and do a class at home and get credit for it, okay. All right,
Hey, I just wanted to weigh in, because you've mentioned writing curriculum and standard line. In my previous life, you need to understand that it's about $650 for one teacher to rewrite a course a year, if it's going to happen on the money outside there. So you do the math and the number of courses we have. I can tell you, previous to shows I was about the same size as this. It's about a $100,000 project. And you just have to understand that.
Yeah.
And there are some other ways to work around that, but
Well-
and it's worthwhile, but it's a substantial number.
I think that should be a conversation item itself at a future CNI meeting. I want to know the status of our curriculum, the objectives of the administration and what it needs to look like versus what it does, and how we can get there. Whether it's a
I think
rewrite.
This has been a contention with the union, right? And they filed a grievance, or did they not? Over curriculum writing? Because in the contract says, we've been kind of doing it.
They did challenge us on doing it during the school day, because it was historically, when the contract was originally done, it was done during the summertime. That was changed to trying to do it during the school year, and they did challenge that. The other problem we're having in doing during the school year is we have a sub problem when you pull teachers out of classrooms. We already have a sub problem. We don't want to be the cause of that sub problem also. So we're balancing it. And then it's time. It does take time to do these things. It doesn't,
Well-
there's a lot of stuff that has to be done there,
So
guys.
then here's a challenge for the administration. If we can diagnose what's the current status of our curriculum, and then what are some ways we can improve it? Whether that's a rewrite costing $100,000, whether that's some other mechanism out there. President, you said there are some other ways to do things. I'd be very interested in learning what those are.
I mean, I think almost everybody on the board has said, well, why does each individual district have, can't you pool your resources? I mean,
Consortium or something. Okay, moving on to one-to-one. Yeah, sorry, we took a lot of time on that language
No, it
discussion,
was a good discussion to have, guys.
and it's one we're going to have to keep having.
Yeah, no, it's a very good discussion to have. Thank you for being open to that whole idea there in the long term. Even if it's not in the short term, we appreciate that a lot, guys. Here's where we are, guys. We are in a situation in our school district where We need to update our materials. It's rather significant. You guys are aware of that as a curriculum committee over the last 2 years. This has kind of bubbled up. Because of that, one of the things we started to look at is we wanted to look at technology and can we replace, we have substantial textbooks costs that are here and they're real right now. They're in our current budget. They were in last year's budget. We held off because we wanted to look into this as a possibility. We are interested in going one-to-one, certainly at the high school level, potentially down the middle, that's a longer-term discussion, but for today's purposes, we're really looking at the high school. There's a short-term reason, okay, and then there's a long-term reason, and I'd like to talk about both of those things right now. From a short-term perspective, right now, it's because we're at a nexus. We have significant curriculum materials to be ordered. At the high school alone this year, right now I have budgeted about $58,000 out of my personal budget for new materials that are necessary. And Preston can certainly speak to this. He has about $60,000. I'm sorry, Preston, $70,000 approximately for replacement text. And that's what replacement comes out of his. That's current stuff that they're so old that we just need, that are falling apart. And then Scott has in his budget right now, he has about $40,000 in computer replacement there, and I believe, and I don't want to speak for Scott, what was it, about 8 years old, you said some of those computers?
And that's our cycle,
Yeah.
right?
And so, it's where we're at, right, wrong, or indifferent. So we have some bills here that we have in our budget, both in the short-term budget and also our longer-term budget. And so with the need to replace these textbooks, it seems to me now would be a time to look at going one-to-one in the high school. And in the short term, it seems to make a lot of sense because of these needs. I believe that in the long term, it's exciting what we can do with the technology. Short term, it solves a need. Long term, it gives us the potential to individualize and differentiate instructions in a real and very practical way for teachers. In the long term, it's going to allow us, we want to have anytime, anywhere learning happening with our students. We want that to be part of our curriculum and what we're doing as a school district. I believe, and certainly no one can tell the future, it's not if all the textbooks go away, it's when that's going to happen. We're in a position now where we can learn from other school districts and their mistakes who went to one-to-one because it was the newest and coolest thing to do. Seems to me now's the right time to move in this direction, both in the short term because we have this nexus of costs that are here. If we don't go this direction, I need to know, and that's fine. But we have to replace some of these textbooks. We have to replace some of these computers. In the long term, the potential of this technology to transform what happens in the classroom is really exciting to me. Will that happen right away? No. At first, there'll be textbook replacements, but that's not the long-term goal. The long-term goal is ultimately to change what happens in the classroom. The advantage of having it digitally is no longer will we have textbooks that are out of date as soon as we buy them because something happens in Asia or a country changes.
What devices are we talking about?
Right, we have decided.
Let's cut to the chase. Dollars and
Fair
cents,
enough.
and
We got the platitudes.
What's the plan?
We got it.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so we would like to do this, and we'd like to have, we wanted to bring it up here because it's the curriculum committee. We'd like to do a formal presentation before the next board meeting. We'll go into specifics with you about budgets, about textbooks, about what we think it can do and how it can transform education in our district, and also help us solve our short-term problem. The textbooks, we are interested in iPads, and the major reason iPads has a significant amount of resources there in their store right away. It's and I won't say turnkey because that would be the wrong, but it's more turnkey than if we were to go, for example, in the Chromebook direction. iPad, they have a library. They've actually worked with the Pennsylvania Department of Education. And I don't know, Scott, if you brought any books, can you pass them out to them? Scott will show you some of the books that are out there that are already there.
Have identified actual open source
There are books right in here.
Text that we
They
can-
are there.
And our teachers are going to be,
Well, so let's dive into that a little bit. Okay, so are our teachers going to be, but right now, the typical teacher is used to the universe of choice that are out there, okay? Hundreds of thousands of books. Well, iPad and the iBookstore will have roughly, on any given topic, 10 to 15 free choices. Now, you can still buy others, but let's just stay on the free side. So, to me, we're narrowing down the choice field for sure.
Thank you.
I don't know that people need 1,000 choices.
No.
Okay? However, nor do I feel like we're a district who has that luxury, quite frankly. So, given the opportunity here that we can be more fiscally responsible in the short term and the long term, because these materials will consistently update for free, okay? But, you know, we've talked about this issue where some of our social studies books are 20 years old. That problem would go away forever. Our budget every year is around between $60,000 and $80,000 in replacement text at the high school alone. We reduced that number down to around 20, because we're always going to need a few actual books in the classroom, but it goes down to about 20,000. So that's a line item that reduces in perpetuity $60,000 going forward. So that's a huge. Is iPad Google better than Google? It doesn't. It's irrelevant in our conversation right now. This does what we needed to do. It becomes a walking around locker of their text materials, and then the bonus side is some things that it can do. The other big bonus because we've met Megan, Scott, and I, and Rob have met with Apple on a number of occasions, and the value is that to the turnkey concept, not 100% turnkey, their professional development is more turnkey. The infrastructure that Scott has in the technology department is not large enough, meaning staffing.
that was one of my questions.
To train us and support it, where the Apple and iBookstore does do that. So, I mean, quite honestly, I like a lot of things in Google that I would probably, if I were just using it in an instructional sense, lean towards that side. But all these other check boxes happen on the Apple side of the aisle. And from the principal side of it, and the curriculum in the high school, that's where it's
So
at.
you're saying by getting the iPads that Apple does come in to help us launch this, or?
Correct. They will actually see it through, whereas we're looking more at third parties with some other vendors. I mean, Apple is vested in this even from a business interest that they obviously want it to succeed. So they have heavily developed professional development. They even have an online badging system for our faculty to work through on their own, outside of the classroom, that they can earn badges and it goes through each lesson. So they have really focused on that area.
Right. So, and as far as, obviously we're going to do a lease, right?
Correct.
Now, have you guys walked it through as far as insurance, what we're going to charge for the kids for insurance, or and then the first time they break it, deductibles, and who fixes it when it's broken? Does it go back to Apple, or is that
We have not had specific discussions on that, with the board's blessing. That's the next round of planning. There are a couple of different ways to handle that, whether it's warranty, in your example, goes back to Apple. We can also do in-house certifications or third-party vendors. There's a couple areas there. As far as insurance goes, that's an interesting area that really hasn't been litigated completely, whether you can do an insurance fee. At one point, it's a requirement for this device, so those are some of the...
It seems that most of the districts have gone that way, haven't they?
Some have gone to a flat-out insurance fee, some have done the deductible, some have only charged if you took the device home. So that's probably the only area as far as one-to-one goes that they really have not converged on a standard practice quite yet.
Okay.
Something that I had sent an email out to the board a few months ago. I'd like to see this in practice, and I know we talked about this a little bit offline too, about possibly going and seeing a school where it is one-to-one and what it looks like in the classroom and how this technology interacts and all that. I don't know if there's any other interest from folks on the committee from doing that. I don't think I received any email or responses to my
February
email.
7th is the string theory in Philadelphia. They would be open to having us if you guys are interested in going in. It is a school in Philadelphia that's going. It's very cutting edge. It is a charter school, but it's very cutting edge. They'd be open on February 7th.
What day of the week is that? Do you have any idea?
It's Tuesday.
Tuesday.
And last year, some of our staff, myself included, had the opportunity to go to some of the schools and have some of that experience and bring back their feedback. And I will say, I don't know if there was much, there was lots of questions and like trying to figure out conversations that were going on, but no huge negative reaction. It was more like, that's pretty awesome. Like,
So was,
I know I came
okay.
back and I was like, whoa, the things, like I had the opportunity to go to string theory and what they can do. There's so much opportunity with it. But there's been some staff who've had that opportunity previously that it was very worthwhile and
Okay.
again, a good basis of information and more to come from.
Well,
We sent members from every department. When we were trying to stage this and work through this, and was this worthwhile? Perk Valley is a school very much like us, not Perk Valley, Bethlehem Valley, down in Lancaster County. And so that was similar, and we sent a large group there. We sent a group up to Southern Lehigh,
wow.
String Theory, and I can't remember the fourth. So, York, Central York, right. So, folks have gotten a chance to engage it. That was when we were trying to decide, Google or Apple.
Yeah.
So folks have gone out and seen it, and to Megan's point, I think, yeah, really, their support, they get the model. They get what we can do with it, where we can go with it. They get the savings and the relationship fiscally to where it can be helpful.
Infrastructure-wise, what do we need? What are our current systems close to being able to supporting this?
Yeah, close is a good word.
Okay.
We've been marching towards this,
Right.
just with the general proliferation of mobile devices, so
Okay.
by the time this comes forward, yeah, we will be there.
Quick note on like these visits to other schools. I know as a member of this committee, I'd be very interested, like if there's a way for the board to be involved in any of those things, not all of them necessarily, but if we're looking at cutting edge schools, I know at least as a member of this committee, I'd be interested in tagging along on some of those if just something I know for the future, and I bet other board members would be too, across the whole board, not just this committee. So February 7th, I don't know.
February 7th, they're open to taking us, there is a limit on the number of people they'll take, but they're
Yeah.
open to having us at string theory, so.
I know I'm certainly interested in doing that. Are there any, I know I don't want anybody to have to commit right now after just having heard that date and all that. But if anybody, like I don't want this just to be for my edification, if it's not worth it for more folks, but I'd like to see this in practice.
So what are we talking dollars wise?
Right now, what we would do, if indeed we went forward with this, I would be taking out about $58,000 out of my current budget right now that I budgeted for like high school chemistry books, things like that. Preston would be taking out about
55 to 64.
from his budget, and Scott would be pulling out of his current budget about $40,000 that he has allocated for computer replacements for next year. The rough costs are, and these are the rough costs, and Kathy will certainly give us the details. It's about my understanding, Scott's about $25,000 a grade level is what you'd be looking at. So,
And that's an annual cost.
and that's an annual cost. Okay, that is annual at that point.
But to be clear, we're not asking for new money. And it's money that is allocated to techs of some system we're going to have to buy. So just to keep that in the apples to apples conversation. Oh, no pun intended. Orange.
All right. Well, is there any more talk on that? This is clearly something we're going to have to keep talking about.
We'd like to present to the
Yeah,
entire
that's
board
gonna
before
happen,
the
I
next
think.
meeting, if that's okay.
Yeah.
And we can go from there. We'll do a formal presentation for the whole board, if you guys are okay with that. Excellent, I'll get us on the agenda.
Now,
You okay with that, Connor?
yeah, I think that's on the agenda anyway, so. Next up on my agenda here is textbook discussion. I think we kind of covered a lot of that with the one-to-one. Now, two scenarios. Let's say the board decides they want to adopt this one-to-one next year.
Yeah.
What do the textbooks then? We're just not going to buy them.
That we will not buy those, and then the other piece is, if we decide we want to go this way, and we don't need this right now, this decision, but if we decide we're going to go this direction.
Yeah, what kind of
we wanna
date-
look at the
what kind
high
of date
school.
do we need here?
We also have, the second piece of that will be, do we want to go down to the middle school ultimately with this? Because they also are dealing with a similar situation. That wouldn't be right away, they're not
Yeah,
ready to go
I
there.
think we just take bites we can chew
Okay.
here.
All right.
That's my, let's get to high school
Yeah.
and then let's see how it goes. And
All right.
So that being said, I mean, we're going to need, where are these textbooks to be replaced?
Well, and here's my question though, and this is what, do you want us to hold off a year? The middle school has looked at science textbooks, they've rewritten the science curriculum, and they've looked at textbooks. Do you want us to hold a year before ordering those? Do you want us to hold a year?
what exactly did they change
Okay, and so
per se? Or is that how much did they change?
they've changed some to align things with the current standards, things of that nature. So
The
they changed.
textbooks that we currently have are 20 years old, so.
I mean, what are we doing now? We're substituting with handouts? Is that what we've been doing?
That's what people have been doing when they have had resources that
Yeah.
weren't up to date with the schools.
I mean, I'd hate to go and spend,
That's what I.
$20,000 on getting all new science books and then a year later saying we're going to,
Exactly, that's why I said maybe we ought to hold that a year. What do you think?
my opinion, I'd say hold off.
Hold.
Yeah, I don't think that'll,
Eighth grade? What are you talking
All
about?
6, 7, and 8 are talking about the same deal.
yeah. The textbooks, though, that you're saying you have money set aside right now to buy new textbooks for next
For
year.
this money, I have about $58,000
Yeah, but,
set aside.
and that's for the 7th, 8th, 9th?
No, it's for high school
Oh,
for
high school,
next year.
okay.
And I
That's what was
have
checking.
money set aside this year, about another, it's actually about 90 because it's 3 grade levels. It's closer to 90 for the middle school set aside for this year to order. I can hold that till next year and not order them and make a decision next year.
Maybe I'm wrong, but taking 7 grades and trying to roll out
Yeah.
computers
My
for 7 grades,
recommendation. Be my
I think we
recommendation.
should, I think that's too much to,
Let's take a deep
I
breath.
see,
Let's see how we
Trevor's
do.
shaking your head back
Let's
there.
see how it goes, yeah, let's see how it goes. So I'll hold it, what I'll do is I'll hold, Jenny, I'm gonna hold your science textbooks till the following year, and then we'll go from there. That way we don't get caught. What I don't wanna do is purchase materials and then go to digital.
If we're almost certainly not going to have one-to-one at the middle school next year, then why would we be holding them?
But then,
What
if
about
I
the
don't,
next?
but
Because
then,
in 2 years we
then
have.
why would you buy
Yeah,
new
do we-
textbooks?
textbooks.
then
Well, we're gonna have
then-
to evaluate, okay, I mean, I
At least we'll be
understand
in a
all
better
that.
position to make a decision on whether we're going to go. into
Okay,
middle
all right.
school
I just don't wanna
by
waste the
next
money.
year.
Right.
and then we decide, we can buy the books next year if we
Yeah.
decide that, well, maybe we don't want to
Putting
do
a
it.
decision off on
One-on-one
the textbooks
Right.
and there to the following year.
Right,
That'll
we're
be
just
it.
building
Just
ourselves in
ultimately,
time.
I'll need to know that if you decide after all of this that
I think
you don't want them to come to the middle school at all. then I'll need my
next year,
textbooks.
either we'll buy the book or we'll do the computer. And, I think that'd be a better way to go. But,
For now, I mean, if the full board doesn't even want to go one-to-one.
yeah, when do we need to make when do we need to make a decision if we're doing this so that you guys aren't caught?
Yes.
And we got overnight books for some odd reason?
That, I mean, I think we have a lot of professional development for our staff because we're going to start that kind of stuff obviously in the spring.
So when does the full board need to actually say, we're doing one-on-one?
Well, we would like to present before the next school board,
Which is happening, yeah.
Yeah,
You'll have a
so-
timetable by then?
I think the timetable really, and Scott has stepped out, he's the one who really is most critical of time, and I'll let him get into detail, but I know that his point was, and I at first was a little crestfallen, but then I understood it when he explained it to me, is that his idea was that you get devices really up and running for the beginning of the second quarter next year, because the start of the school year, with all the other things that happen, if you start right away, it's a crash and burn a lot of times. So he can go into the details as to why he thinks, launching it for the first day of the second quarter is really the model. But that's the timeline we're kind of looking at.
Well, how would it work also making sure that students are using the iPad only for the purposes they're supposed to be using it for, and they're not playing video games in the middle of class? Like,
So, yeah, and so I can talk this because my son they're in the first year of their one-to-one. And so they're restricted. There are only certain places they can go. A report gets run, I guess, nightly. If they go to the wrong places, because kids are smart, they find a way
Right.
around the filter. And then there's discipline associated with that. I'm not letting them personally, I'm just saying that.
Okay.
I've been told. So that's the kind of thing I know is happening. There's also things that I didn't know the iPad could do that he showed me, in terms of taking notes right in the document. And then through Schoology, which is the tool we have, teachers build out programming and assignments, and you can go there. And just to get far afield now for just 1 second, is that our kids, when they're in study hall now, or if a teacher's absent and the assignment's in there, education continues. Okay, now our teachers, they will send a lesson plan in, which will be skeletal, because they're not sure who they're getting as a sub, the sub will mess it up, and so this just is much better in terms of the educational continuum. That's a long
Yeah.
conversation, but I'm just sharing, I see what's happening with my son and his model, so.
if we bring the iPads into the high school, does that mean we won't have cell phones allowed anymore?
That's a board decision.
It wasn't a board
decision.
decision to add them.
Well, it wasn't my decision, I can tell you that. I think that's my personal opinion is that is a bell that you can't unring. You can, if you're prepared for the hard part.
And it's almost impossible to implement. Whether you want it that way or not, they're small, there's no way to look for them effectively. Yeah, some kids are gonna be stupid and obvious, they're gonna catch them, and there's gonna be a whole bunch of other kids that aren't. It's not.
This year, we've not had a ton of cell phone issues. You know, Megan, she sees more disciplined kids than I do, but haven't been a lot of complaints on that issue. Most of our stuff is social media stuff that is happening outside the day that moves back into the day, and they're gonna have their phones outside the day.
Yeah.
So we haven't had a lot of issues on cell phone stuff this year so far.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll be hearing more about that.
But so, there's a meeting on Monday, a week from today, right? There's a voting meeting a week from Monday. The board's probably not going to vote on Monday. I mean, maybe, so is the voting meeting in a month enough time? Is the February voting meeting give us plenty of time to get, because it shouldn't take us more than a month to evaluate whether we want to do this or not, right? There shouldn't be really
As long as all the information, it's a good presentation, and we understand the costs and the benefits.
I
If there's stuff we
Rob
want,
wants
you
to say
still
something,
have
he's kind of
still have the
ears
cow
turning.
I'm thinking this.
Right, and you still have the cow. If we want additional information, we can ask them to have it ready for the cow, the February cow, and then, so I'd be very surprised if we aren't ready to vote in February.
I
I
guess
would say
it's,
Scott's the person, because he has the most infrastructure stuff to, once,
well, and he's let on that
I
it's
wouldn't go beyond February.
close to
It's one way or
being,
the other.
And it was leaving now,
but I would think, honestly, by February, we'd still be okay.
Yeah, it's a matter of getting, for planning purposes and for the investment of the money, that certain things have to be done and the timetable for those things have to be decided on, along with the professional development. As I've had the conversation, once this discussion has been ongoing, he said February is okay, by the way. Is our teachers in their mindset, most, not all, but many of the teachers who are in place right now are my peers, that we started teaching at the same time. There's some that are above and there's some that are newer, but it's a mindset change for them, just like we're working on our scheduling and making sure our scheduling timeframe is more conducive to them. They will have the most time, hopefully, this year to plan for next year, because they'll know their schedules when they leave. And for them to have the most time that they can have with the devices, with the planning, with the trainings, to be able to implement it to the highest degree. They've learned Schoology, which is the program that will do a lot of their interactions. There's a lot of things that they need to know, and they need that time to kind of switch gears from textbook, paper, pencil, which will happen somewhat, but to how do I use this iPad and how do I
and
make it?
it'll probably be a larger change for the staff, the teaching staff, than it will be for the students.
Correct, and that's the conversation that's been ongoing. That's the fact that I can say what my children have done and what my students have done throughout the years. The kids are used to having an electronic device to do their assignments and their reading and their homework. The teachers are not used to using it in that sense.
Our new
yet.
teachers that are coming out straight from college, are they learning how in their classes how to teach with technology like this? Is this the new standard in the education world?
We
Or,
haven't had that many new
no?
teachers hired.
Okay.
So I'd like to say, yes, they know, but
Well, there'll be a few. I'm sure we have
a
some.
little sprinkling.
all right, okay.
But we do have an implementation timeline sketched out, and a important part of that would be to get, if it goes forward, is to get around 65 iPads in teachers' hands here in the spring, which Scott figured out, at least he can explain it all to you, on how we could do that, so then we could use the March and April in-service time to provide the Apple teacher badging PD time.
And anybody
So
can
there's a
sign up
model
for
in
it.
play.
Like I have gone through the process of going through the Apple Teacher. Like you guys can sign up and go through the Apple Teacher process. And I learned, there was a lot that I knew because I use an iPad intensively in what I do, but there's a lot that even I learned.
Is it like basic how to use the iPad?
Yeah,
It's everything, I
completely
guess.
interactive of, it starts with the basics and then it grows into depth.
I think it's about eight badges you can earn as you go. It's interesting. It's pretty intuitive for you to use.
Preston, to your point about the implementation timeline too, in my opinion, this is just well, it might be, the board might agree with me, but maybe not. But my opinion is that the board's role is to approve the cost, and the implementation's up to you.
Absolutely.
I don't care when you implement it. Well, in my opinion, like I said, I don't think we oversee the day-to-day
No, my point to you is that
delivery
we
of
need that.
education.
The decision has to be made to
Question was,
meet the
when do we
timeline for
need
March.
decisions?
I'm not disputing that. I'm simply saying,
Yeah,
he brought it
yeah, we
up, and
agree.
I'm saying, I don't, I'm not, in all cases, not all 9 of us don't necessarily agree on things like that. But
My point isn't about you approving implementation. My point is about you greenlighting it so we can move to the implementation.
Yeah.
So that will have to happen
And
in
that's
no later
what
than
Beth said.
February.
He said February is okay, general guidance to continue planning would be helpful. So if it comes off the table next week, like, it doesn't look like we're moving in that direction, then we know. But in the meantime, we'll continue doing the meetings and the planning on our end as we move forward.
Okay. Well, I had 2 other items on the agenda. One was staff engagement, which is something I'm going to talk about, or we're going to all talk about, I guess, in the personnel committee coming up. But since Dave isn't on that committee, he's on this committee, I guess it would be worth mentioning now. I'd like to get some more feedback from the boots on the ground folks, if you will, the frontline staff, the teachers, the people who are in the classrooms, to know, like, we talk about these ideas up here as a C&I committee. Some of these ideas are generated by members of the committee, some come from the administration. But I wonder if there's anything from closer, like, for individual teachers might say, well, here's an area of the district where we're not really as there's a gap in our program here, something that we wouldn't know necessarily sitting at this level in the administration. I mean, there's a good chance they know, but maybe not. Maybe there's...
It's kind of funny you bring that up, because, we did have our social with the teachers last
Oh,
week.
yes.
And one of the items that came up was that, they like some more partnership. and
Okay.
Working together with the administration, so,
Administration or administration and board?
administration.
Okay, interesting. All right, I think that's something then to think about how we can, because I mean, we're not the only ones with ideas. We don't have a monopoly on ideas, the people in this room. And the people who, spend the most time with the students, I'm sure they see things and they identify challenges and opportunities, and just kind of getting those ideas to percolate up in the system, take advantage of that expertise that we have across the spectrum there. So that was that idea, but... All right, does anybody else have anything now for the good of the order?
I'll be real quick, just another topic that came up at our social with the teachers was, we had a discussion about, tuition reimbursement and stuff that's, changed with the contract. They would have preferred to have more conversation on that, making sure that the younger teachers are getting the required courses they need. And, one of their concerns was that in the new contract, we're restricting some of the courses to more graduate degree stuff. So they were concerned that the cost of Act 48 credits, are we providing that now for our in-service? Are we giving them?
When it has to meet our strategic plan, in order to award Act 48 hours, obviously the teacher has to meet the outcomes of the in-service itself, and it has to be aligned with our strategic plan. So yes, to answer the question, when it's appropriate, we provide it for them now. Okay.
Should we be providing more of those so that they don't have to go out and get these, graduate level classes that maybe, they don't want to take, and it's costing us more money?
Yeah, we started doing it this year. It hadn't been done previously in the district.
Okay. So, yeah, I like this, I think they would like to see that continue. I think we could save some money that way too. So, no? Yes? Yes?
Awesome.
Okay.
All right. Well, seeing I don't think there's any public comment. That being said, then, we'll meet next month, and if any board members, I'm going to review this internal chart here to see if there's anything I have on this. I'd like to keep talking about foreign language and this exploratory program, but I guess that's it for tonight. And it's...
We get to keep these, right?
No, that's my job too.
All right, so Curriculum and Instruction Committee is adjourned at 6:58.